We are live on a Sunday evening, and welcome truth proofers, I should say, and everybody in the chat. Great to see you all in there. And hello, Paul.
Hello, Les. Yeah, had a good weekend.
Not too bad. A little few domestic chores and a little bit of filming. I think we did on Friday. I did on Friday for our Wolflands 2 film. So yeah,
same here. We've just been hard at it. Not just to do with unexplained, hard at it with life. We're like everybody else in chat, I suppose, and everybody listening to this. We've just things outside of the unexplained. But I'm looking forward to this next hour. I know we've got to crack on a little bit, people, tonight. If we will take some questions, but we might not get to as many. And if we don't answer them, apologies, because we're going to be talking to Dr. Martin Abbas tonight about this stratification tool that me and him have been working on, and Martin will explain it better when we get him on. But we'll just do a quick count on people here. Shane Bongos, Richie White, Mike Disabled Welshman, Declan Walsh, Peter Armstrong, Fraser, Zeno, Linny's in. We are 138. Alison's moderating for us. Thanks, Alison. Fred Flintstone, Bob, Richie White, Stargazer, Elaine's in, Zero Dawn, and I'm Rebecca King, and I'm going to stop because we want to get Martin on because we realise we've just got 60 minutes tonight, people. Thank you.
Okay, then. And without further ado, then we'll add Martin into the stream and welcome Martin.
Hi, Martin.
Nice to see everybody from this side of the camera. All the truth proofers. I'm sorry I can't say hi in the chat, but hi everybody there.
So, and just before we start, I'll disappear into the background, guys. And if we get any questions through, regarding tonight's stream, I'll come back on later.
Thank you, Les. That's brilliant. See you in a minute. Okay. Great stuff, Martin. Well, honestly, the support that you give myself, Les, and everybody else, and all the positive that you put through towards the subject of the unexplained and lateral thinking all of the time. It's brilliant to have you here tonight sat in front of us. So before we jump into this bit of paperwork we've been looking at and working on, how did you become involved in the subject of the unexplained? I mean, because it's a jump from kind of academia and things, isn't it? You know, in some respects.
Yeah, it is, Paul. And thank you for your kind words. And I think I speak for everyone of the Truth Proofers that this is our show that we watch. It's a go-to show. It's mandatory watching in my house anyway. So yeah, I'm a medical doctor, GP, Central London. How did I sort of get involved in the subject? Well, I think as a child, I had some unusual experiences. I've got a twin brother. I can recall having a close connection. I'd kind of feel or know where he was. If he was out, he's going to be coming back soon. I know he's coming back soon. He had an appendix removed. I was walking to school. I could feel some pain. I could hardly get to school. And then it sort of eased off around 9 o'clock. And that was when he had his appendix out. It was very unusual. And obviously that connection dissipated. But it was kind of an unusual thing. And there's a few other things as well. I'd kind of dream things which seemed to manifest or come true. So the Costa Concordia event, I remember dreaming about a ship on its side and the captain waving, and all of those things a few years later appeared in the news. And I thought, oh my God, that's a bit weird. All of these things are weird and probably just circumstantial, or I don't know. But it was something that, tweaked the interest. And if you watch Star Wars as a kid, who's not going to be interested in space and UFOs and everything else. And then the X-Files, etc. You'd watch those things. And then probably a pivotal part was when my wife passed away, my first wife, 12 years ago now. And you, at that point, as normally as a doctor, you're always interested in the lives of your patients and how they feel and what's going to happen to them. And as you learn about people, you learn about their needs, their wants, and their lives. And then I guess you start thinking, well, what comes after that? And with my wife passing away, it was about, well, what comes next? Where would she be now, kind of thing. So then, you'd watch things on the internet, Netflix, whatever, and some elements about near-death experiences. What happens when you die? That phenomenon with the tunnel that you have, and then that after-death analysis that you have, and this expansions of one's consciousness then is kind of triangulated among many sort of stories. And then you then move on to, well, okay, if consciousness is continuing, does that mean that you come back, you reincarnate? And then, yes, there's evidence of that as well, or at least there seems to be, of people coming back and having past lives. I've even come across a person in my profession that has told me that they've been reincarnated 3 or 4 times. I asked him what was in between, and he said just blackness. So that wasn't that helpful. But
in a way that I've heard people talk about that when people who claim to have had an experience of death and then being brought back, and people have said, what would it like? And they said it was just blackness. But you must have been somewhere to experience blackness. So is it a transition period? Do you know what I mean? You knew that it was blackness.
Well, exactly. That it's something tangible to the self, the conscious self, correct? And then if you look, I mean, there's that case of Ryan Hammonds, the child that thought he was the actor Marty Martin, who used to be called what was his name, Kalinsky. He was in Night and Day, if I remember rightly, the film, and the child saw a still of him, and then they looked into the story, and it turned out that this guy was Marty Martin, and the boy, who then started to get older, could say where the guy lived and who he was, what he used to do, what his routine was. And then there's another one which triangulates it even further. I think it was what's his name, James Leninger. He was a young kid who thought he had been shot down by the Japanese in World War II, and then he could recognize his co-pilots in the air. And he started off with dreams of crashes. So that kind of, it's kind of this journey down the rabbit hole, which takes you further. And then you think, well, if life is continuing, what is consciousness about? Is this, is it very similar to the Buddhist monk theory that you learn, you experience, you improve oneself, you die, you come back to improve something further? Almost like Nigel Gillis's view of that entity that can come into you. Are we actually just a 3D manifestation of a wider conscious being? Are we part of a life cycle, a 3D life cycle of learning for this conscious being? It's weird. It takes you down a rabbit hole.
Can I just sort of drag you right back to childhood, and you were about that the appendix and your brother as a medical man now? What have you got conflicting thoughts about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could have just been. I mean, to be honest, I was quite clueless about what was going on with him. And it was he's just got a virus or something. I was thinking, he's got a cold, whatever, and he's got a bit of tummy pain. I mean, could it have been that I had some kind of, I don't know, similar pains in kind of, in harmony with him to try and, sympathy pains, as it were. Maybe, but to be honest, I wasn't that sympathetic to my brother. He was a bit of a bully. But and the pain really only came on when I was walking, and I thought, maybe it could have been my abdominal migraine. I mean, I've got everything under the sun that I could say it could be as a diagnosis.
And I suppose, as thinking a bit skeptically, that's what happens, isn't it? Because we can't. A lot of people just don't want to kind of go open that box and look into it and think, well, this could be actually some kind of, I'm reluctant to say phenomena, but something that's happening, and we just simply don't understand it. Because you'll not be the only case of twins having shared experiences of pain or other things. I mean, Les knows who I'm talking about, and we know 2 fishermen, and I remember Tom saying to me, when I'm hurting, he hurts, kind of thing, and he told me about it. Not in any great detail, but they were experiencing or had experienced similar things, and I'm sure there's hundreds, if not thousands, more cases. I don't know whether there's ever been a study done on that, but it's fascinating, isn't it?
Well, when you start doing research, there's all sorts of studies that you wouldn't think have been done. I mean, I was looking today, just in preparation, in case someone asked it, about expansions of consciousness. I was looking at I think the psychiatry paper was published about DMT and how that expands one's consciousness. 2,500 individuals surveyed, and I thought, what on earth is going on here? But there you go.
And that DMT, the natural substance. They call it the vine of the dead, and it's
the
ayahuasca
thing.
Ayahuasca. But the thing behind it is that the people using it claim to see and experience almost euphoric things. They call it the spirit molecule, don't they?
Yeah, and if you look, there's lots of ancient civilizations or civilizations from history who've used similar things. So in Egypt, I'm half Egyptian, I would kind of look into it in that way. They used a blue flower, which probably had similar properties. You've got psilocybin from mushrooms, etc. You know, from the Druids, for example, they have a similar thing. So, you know, but looking at that, I was just thinking, well, what's the triangulation there? I'm you know, scientifically, is there something here? And that study implied that there was a similarity to the entities that you come across, and that they generally tend, although 41% of them of the study participants said they were fearful, had on the whole a positive outcome, because on the whole 6 of the 7 that they mention are positive.
Right. Okay.
So again, coming from a scientific slant, you know, how do you go down the rabbit hole? And I'm not one of these people who's going to just suddenly agree that obviously this must be true, which is one of the reasons why we've created this kind of study. And it is a study; it's a research project that anyone in the show, watching the show, could theoretically participate in, and that's what this is. Because often we hear that this show is a really good outlet for the truth proofers just to watch and see and discuss and talk in a safe place. Well, this is another step to that. You then can commit to some level of research and understanding about why something might have happened to you and the phenomenon around you. That's kind of where this is coming from, I guess.
Well, I'm kind of looking forward. I've filled one part of it in recently. I mean, it's not a book that people have got to fill in. Let's face that one. But it's a series of questions, and walk us through it then, Martin. Do you want Les to put the document up on the screen?
Yeah. If Les can do that.
Can you read that? Because you're probably looking at a smaller screen.
It is the smallest screen in history that I can see at this moment, but I'll have a go. So this is basically the Paul Sinclair and Dr. Martin Abbas Paranormal Phenomenon Contact, Stratification and Triangulation Tool. If someone wants to come up with a better name for it, aka the Sinclair, I don't know, whatever tool you want to put it, you by all means. So it's essentially a questionnaire, and basically we're trying to get the story of whatever happened with the phenomenon, this contact episode, how it interacted with you, and there's elements of the questionnaire which sort of look at that in more detail. It purposefully looks at not just one aspect of a phenomenon contact, so UFO or cryptid or ghost, poltergeist or demonic. It purposefully keeps everything on the same page so that you can actually put down, you know, different elements of the contact which might sit in any one of those different types of box. Because I remember you, Paul, saying that time and again you would have a documented episode which in actual fact would have multiple streams to it, demonic, ufological, or paranormal, which wouldn't be documented, and then that would lose some of that data. And the idea of this data, as it says in the blurb,
do you want him to go down a little bit?
He can do. I mean, I'm not going to read. It probably isn't worth.
No need to read it, no, because people will be able to get this link, won't they? So they can read it themselves.
And the idea is, if we can get enough people to fill out these forms with one episode of contact per form, we might be able to get a larger number of people presented with data that we can then extrapolate some sort of conclusions from. And importantly, rather than it just being a record of a event, it is also to look at what might be the connection that we put out to the phenomenon. This kind of, because not only, I mean, as part of any discussion, there's 2 people talking, isn't there? Yeah. So we're not just going to be talked to by the phenomenon. We're talking back to it in some way. What is the trigger? What is the pull, if there is one, that would allow us to then try and extrapolate some similarities the triangulation element of the tool, to then figure out, can we say that it's, it's young children where this begins? It's that you were hungry at the time, you hadn't had sugar. There's an element in there about, we'll go through it, but this is the plan. It is what are we doing to connect to the phenomenon, to bring it to us, if at all anything.
And anyone worrying about confidentiality, that details, what?
Yeah. So it'll come through to us at that email. I thought it was quite an interesting email. Yeah, I don't know if we'll get any disclosure, but there we go. And then it will anonymize the data. So if you do put your name and address or whatever, or any contact details on there, we'll anonymize it, and you'll be basically given a number. And then that might tally up with your name on a separate document somewhere else.
Never the two can be connected. Yeah.
It's anonymized, and then it will be recorded on a very safe server. I won't say what type of server, but it will be, knowing my profession, a very strong, sturdy server for my personal documents. So there we go.
So we've got the various categories here, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got obviously ghost, poltergeist, and in that I didn't put the sort of out of body phenomenon because it was going to get very large. You're sort of going we're
limited, aren't we, with space here?
Along the paper. It's going to, you're not going to. I'll need a sort of an A5 sheet. So we kept it limited. But if out of body would be something that you would want to put down, or past life or something of that nature, I guess that would probably go in the ghost, poltergeist element. Is that what you would be? Kind of the ghost in that scenario,
plus the fact that obviously if there isn't a category there for what someone filling this in as wants to put, you put the closest to it, because we can follow this up, and we will speak to people if they want to and gather more details.
And in the descriptor, I mean, obviously I'm relatively intelligent. I can probably figure out another category if necessary, or indeed if you've put things in the wrong place. Although it's quite nice you putting it in the wrong place, because then that's your perception of the thing. Me as an observer, I don't want to change what you perceived. I want to use that as raw data. However, obviously, if it's obvious that it actually a light phenomenon was more of a UFO, or if it was more demonic based on what you thought and your thoughts were, that will be recorded in the in the description part of the record of the phenomenon. So we put in here, you can see some descriptors, cryptid, etc. I couldn't find a classification of how cryptids might interact with you. So much like the UFO one, where visual sighting, level 2, level 3, 4, 5, etc. I've tried to create something for. But in the brief description, if somebody claimed that they'd had mind speak, they could just put it. Everything's got to be brief, because there's not a lot of room anyway. But on the follow-up of the report, we can gather more detail. Absolutely. This is just. I mean, I thought even people would be, apart from the descriptor, just putting an X in a box. Really, there doesn't have to be great description. Just needs to give us an idea about. Were you young? Were you old? Were you not? Were you hungry? Were you not? Had you taken any drugs? Had you not?
Well, what's interesting? I mean, I had went through one of these, as you know, but I thought, well, there's only one episode you can start with, and that I started at childhood, and there's so many things happened in my teenage years, and then from the 1990s. So you'd maybe have to use more than one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
you'd have to use more than one. And to be honest, if you want to get a reasonable level of data for each episode, you'd have to put it on a separate sheet. And indeed, it says if you want to add more, you can add more. The thing is, obviously, if you got, say, 4 episodes and half of them you were hungry and half of them you weren't, how can you extrapolate is hunger or the lack of having had some food and sugar level
a key factor?
Exactly. So
and the hunger, it's not as silly as it's not silly at all as it might sound, because it'd be fascinating if you had these episodes and you were hungry, or your low calorific intake, and the episode sort of gravitated towards what some people would be calling an angelic or demonic type experience.
Exactly.
This is what we're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, could that high sugar level have had an effect on how your brain perceives it? Or could it have been that then triggered something within you that manifested a demonic level of outcome rather than a ufological outcome or cryptid outcome, for example? We're just trying to scientificize it, if you want to. I don't know what the word would be, but yeah, we're trying to make it objective, I guess. For something which often is more of a subjective outcome, which then people ridicule. And we're making this not that. And then obviously there's other elements to it. You know, have you had experiences like this before? Is there something running in the family? You know, the duration of the encounter there implies, well, look, you know, can we extrapolate? You know, each of these things you can break down as for each. So if you've got 100 people and the duration is very long and they were young, then you might extrapolate that young people have a long episode versus an older person might not. And you can break down for all of these criteria something, and then you can obviously bring a bigger.
Sure it's going to reveal something. I mean, as a study, I don't know how long it's going to take. I suppose, and obviously, I think I said to you and Les and Alison before we started, there's 183 people. I don't want 183 emails in the morning. Go, I'll be scratching my head then. Only joking, people, but you know, bear in mind there will be some response to this, so you might have to wait. You know, it'll not be instant.
And as you can see, there's elements here about visual activity. You know, did you see anything? But that might also be visual implantation. So you saw symbols, for example. I don't know, Paul, if you can remember that happening ever to you. But that might be something that you would say, that intermind connection. You know, you heard or felt an intermind connection. Something was with you. That kind of, you know, Bluetooth connection that some people would suggest happens.
Or perceiving something before the event,
exactly.
And dropping into this lower silence. You know, this strange descent into the atmospheric changes and things. So it's all thermal temperature there, doesn't it?
Thermal temperatures. Yeah, I mean, you know, this tool isn't also just for those people who are novices to the subject, although who's really an expert in this? No one knows anything really, because there's no book about it that you can cite. You know, this also is though for those people who maybe have some equipment like a thermometer, like an EMP checker, or, you know, magnetometer, that kind of thing. So you can put things in there. It's useful if you've got it, but if you don't have to. For example, there's elements in here which are quite subjective. Fear, for example. How does one measure fear? Well, in this I've put down maybe out of 3, 1 no fear, 2 medium amounts of fear, and 3 heightened fear. You know, because it needs to be relatively easy to reproduce as well. You know, were you fearful or not? Or that's kind of in between, number 2. So there's
it's pretty easy to use, Martin, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
I think it is.
It was made so.
I'm sorry. No, I'm just looking. I know there's going to be questions, and Alison will have forwarded them to Les. So, but Dippy Do has put a question in it's not in capitals. So just see if you can grab that one, Les, or you maybe already have. Give us a thumbs up if you have. We are going to answer that anyway. But sorry, Martin, fire away.
Yeah, I mean, as you go down, I think there was a question in the chat there about what about religious beliefs. Well, there is that in there, because would your religious belief paradigm affect whether or not you see demonic or angelic phenomenon, or would it be ufological? If you're more scientific, is it going to be more ufological? Or, quite interestingly, you're a scientist and you saw a demonic thing in front of you. Well, that challenges your science, doesn't it? And maybe that's part of the phenomenon having a game with you, because we often hear about this thing where the phenomenon almost kind of tries to impress you or have fun with you when it does it for the first time. The trickster element, exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see that. So in that, in the questionnaire, there's also elements about, you know, what's your job, what's your role, what kind of achievement do you have, you know, age, sex, you know, ethnicity, you know, does your cultural belief system, if you could try and extrapolate something about that, affect what you would see? If you're an Arabian, for example, I'm half Arabian, I would know you might see the jinn, for example, and it might present in that way. Although if you're in Iran,
or that could be just your interpretation of what it is, and you might not be seeing jinn. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is it. How do we know? No, I don't think anyone's done this level of research, and we're at the sort of ground zero. People in the chat are going to be able to be part of this, hopefully, if they feel there's merit in it. I think there probably will be.
I'm sure there is.
And then as we work down, obviously alcohol intake. I mean, I saw I don't want to dismiss people, and no one was going to be dismissed in terms of their story. Everyone's valid. But of course, if you've had, a bottle of whiskey prior to an event, we'd have to understand that might have had an effect on your observation. And we have to be realists. We often forget things that happened on a night if you've drunk too much. Well, we have to be careful about how we extrapolate that information and apply to our data set. Social history, stress factors, have you had a recent bereavement? Was that a trigger? Often we hear about, well, from my experience, wife passing away. Did that trigger something in me? Did that then mean that I then started working on my consciousness, expanding my consciousness, doing some remote viewing? We talked about that on the show before, Paul, or you did, about us doing that in the forest together. And you experiencing this kind of visual presence in your mind, that macabre, that kind of diagonal triangle that was in gold. For me, it was in black and white. Maybe I don't see in color. I don't know. But it was unusual. It was an unusual experience. No drugs taken on the form. It would be, we were hungry. I was hungry. So does that have an effect? I don't know. The fact that we try to meditate, that's also in the questionnaire as to did we try and attract it and draw the phenomenon in? And certainly I would say that we did in that episode of Contact. The same would apply probably when we went later to the cliffs and we saw those unusual light phenomena in the sky and an unusual werefrog noise.
The sound. We created a new cryptid that night.
Yeah, we did. I don't know what number that would go in. Frog number 2. I don't know. But we didn't see something, truth proofers, but we heard an unusual sound, which it sounded like a frog or something of that nature. But Paul's described it on the show a couple of times. But it's where the sound moved from underneath our feet to sort of 2 meters away to another part of the bridge platform we're on, and then it suddenly is down halfway down a cliff. How on earth does that happen? Field. And then it's in a field, 50 meters away, 20 meters away.
How many witnesses were there? 6 or 7?
7, yeah. Hi to the team, by the way, Ian and Mick and Pete. Hi, Pete. They're lurking in the background. Nice to see everybody there, and everybody else. Alex,
Jeremy will be there, and Alex. Yes, all good.
So I mean, they were all there. They could fill out one of these forms. They could help us triangulate what would be, if any, a pull factor to a phenomenon, if that was a paranormal phenomenon. Maybe it was just a cliff moving. But then when I spoke to you about that, you said, well, I've never heard that sound at all before. And you've been on those cliffs for years.
Well, yet I kind of came, I've thought hard, just like you have, and everybody who heard it that night, about this sound. And only thing I could come up with in my mind was that it's composition's chalk. Maybe there was some settlement and, as it's snapping, simplify it and let's imagine we're snapping a piece of chalk and we get a sound. Well, these are big, I don't know, layers of chalk. I thought, was that the sound that we were hearing? But then I always use Mick as an example. Mick Sigson will be watching this and he'll go, he's fished these cliff tops over 50 years. He'd never heard it before, never heard anything like it. He sits there at 3 a.m. till 6 a.m. when tides are in silence, just himself, all over the place along him. He's never heard it. I'm not saying that there isn't a natural explanation. It was just unusual.
And we as objective observers, we need to think of these other explanations. So we said a werefrog. Well, look, if it was a frog.
Only joking there, people.
Or some other animal, though, Paul. A weird rabbit sound or something. Well, how come you haven't heard it before? How did it move so quickly? Was it one frog communicating with another frog in terms of a mating ritual, and then it moved up the hill? Well, they've only mated one day in the last 20 years, it seems. Because
plus the fact it was right under our feet.
and it didn't move any foliage as it moved.
There's nothing moved. It was strange. Yeah,
it was very weird, and I'm glad we managed to get hold of some of the sound recording.
Well, luckily you heard it first. Because we were talking, you said, "Can you hear that sound?" And we didn't ignore you, but we just didn't pick up on it straight away. And then, as soon as you alerted to us to it, it was literally under our feet. It just felt like it were right under my feet. It were weird. And you know, we'll go back to the sound, but we just finished this. We're going to put a link up, aren't we? And everything's there for people to just download the form and, to the best of your ability, as truthful as you can, and fire it off to that link. And go on, Martin.
I was just finishing it off. I mean, you can see there about age of first experience, family members, military input. If you don't put military input, or if you don't put anything about drug misuse, we will not be inferring anything about that. We'll just assume it's blank. We're not going to say that you did or you didn't. Okay, so that's one thing to point out. When this is a non-judgmental form. And the other thing about the form also looks at, well, what were your thoughts about why it happened? That was a very important thing that Paul sort of put in there, because if you have an idea why it happened, was that intermind connection drawing you or advising you why it was happening? Is there something within you? And that's important to record, why you felt it was happening or what you thought it was. It gives us a good perspective about the phenomenon and how it interacted with you.
Yeah, excellent. So there's a link to this form within this YouTube. So, and I know Les has put the link in, so you can be able to copy and paste the link, and feel free to just go through the form as honestly as you can and get it sent away to the email address. And like Martin says, everything will be anonymized, and you'll just become a number.
Yeah, and you can at any stage, at any point in time, if you wish your form to be destroyed, that's perfectly fine. We might ask if we can keep the information in terms of outcome. So this phenomenon happened, and this person, this was roughly their demographics in a sense. But if you don't want any of that, we can remove it completely from the data set. That'll be fine, no problem. It's your data. It's not my data. It's your data, and it will always be your data, even if it's in my hands.
Brilliant. That's great. So back to the sound. I mean, I'm just looking at Les, because obviously I can see Les. Is there any questions that are valid to this now, Les? Thumbs up if there is. It sounds like there is.
Okay, yes. Let's have a look. We have. Let's see if I can get me questions through. Thanks for the monetary donations tonight, folks, and always greatly appreciated.
And we will try and touch on the sound, but we'll just run with these questions, so it's all good.
Okay, I'll put this one on the screen, hopefully. Dippy-do, do you think as humans we are programmed to think there is an afterlife, as it's too harsh to accept otherwise? All religions are based on afterlife as a comforter to the human mind.
I don't know, to be honest with you. And he's right, though. I suppose all religions do talk about something after this. And why do they do that? Probably because the people who've been touched by religion, in my opinion, I mean, I'm not that religious. I brought up in a Church of England school, and we had religion pushed down our throats, if I'm being truthful. But people who've truly been touched by religion have clearly experienced something from the other side. So why shouldn't they think that there's something external, something other than this what we're immersed in at the moment? What are your views on it, Martin?
Well, I do think there is something after. I'm not sort of a very religious person, although I was brought up in a relatively religious household, both Islamic and also Christian, believe it or not. So there's kind of that, interplay. But obviously, since you come close to death as a medic through your day-to-day work, and also personal elements of that. My father passed away, mother passed away, other half passing away. And you get older, you get used to this idea, could there be something after death? And as I say, that's why I looked at that past life element. I tried to understand from an objective scientific point of view, are there stories, which is all there is going to ever be. There is no documentation about what happens after death. Otherwise, this wouldn't be a question. So, is there an interplay between that and consciousness? Because if there is life after death, which there appears to be, according to these afterlife and rebirth stories, the kid who thought he was an actor, the kid who thought he was an airline pilot, well, then consciousness then must be persistent and permanent. And then it makes you wonder, well, the Dalai Lama sits on his mountain and is meditating all the time. Is that how you, I don't mean to be facetious, is that how you expand your consciousness? Because that was another element of why I was doing remote viewing. I was trying to think, well, there's science behind this theoretically. So SRI, and Ego Swan and the guys down there, what was his name? I wrote it down. It's going to come to me when I think about it. They talk about looking within, and that comes from that Buddhist kind of teaching. So looking within's one's own consciousness, their own inner mind. Using that allows you to remote view, according to the team from it's an interesting concept. And if you look at some of the research, if you look at some of the things that they say, so Third Eye Spies, everyone's watched that movie, I'm sure. It's a good documentary. It talks about how they use remote viewing and expanded consciousness to try and remote view targets. If you look at some of Stephen Greer's work, he'll talk about how consciousness is not temporal. So there's an element to this where you can go back in time, forward in time to this point in space time, and you can remote view. I was doing some remote viewing. I got better results than I ever anticipated. At one point, I was number 1 in the world. There's like 5,000 people doing this remote viewing contest. I can give you the information about it if you want to.
You've already given it me. I've already been looking at it, haven't I? So
it's crazy. It's negatively marked. I mean, it's like an MCQ in medicine, or at least it was in my day. If you get the wrong thing and you put down high confidence of it being wrong, your percentage goes down even lower. So there's something about it, about you have to be quite good at it, although it's something that's learnable, apparently. And I was a novice, and I'm probably still a novice. I'm not any expert in any way, but you can get good at it the more you do it. So I was doing that every night for 2 years, a bit of meditation, improving one's own consciousness, fingers crossed, and expanding oneself to then go within and look at without, as it were. And then it makes you then wonder, well, what's all this stuff about vibration? Where does that come from? If you can improve your consciousness, because everyone would say, well, the Dalai Lama or Buddhist monks have got a higher vibration, right? Yeah. Maybe they're higher on their conscious evolution. If we're talking about this life cycle of a conscious entity, and we're just a 3D manifestation of that, which is where perhaps all of this matrix and this holographic universe thing comes in. Are we just the manifestation, a 3D manifestation of a conscious thought? A wide being thought. You can see that consciousness affects the material world with the double slit experiment. Yeah, you look at the beams of photons or electrons. They go through 2 slits. It makes the wave pattern, and if you look at it, it makes 2 line pattern. But then if you take it further, there is some research that say that some psychics didn't look at the phenomenon, the double slit experiment. They just thought about it.
And it still changed.
And it still changed, depending on how good the psychic was. Yeah. And how good,
what Dippy Doo says, though, is afterlife just a comforter to the human mind? And religions have somehow put this cushion in to comfort us. Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. You could be right, but from my experience, they've never been that bothered about whether we need that kind of comfort or not. I'm not sure that it is, but it's a great question. It's a challenging question. It's a great question.
Well, if you were,
hold on, we'll move on to another one, Martin. I've just
otherwise, if you're a conscious being and you knew everything as part of, so in the NDE, so near-death experiences, you expand your mind and you become all-knowing. You wouldn't be able to learn anything. So the only way that your conscious mind will be able to do that would be to condense one's mind, which is why we don't connect, in my view, perhaps to that higher conscious self, except through meditation, expanding oneself. you would have to do that and become a 3D entity or an element. Maybe like this was say this is our 3D entity, but our wider conscious self is higher and not 3D. And our finger is understanding and learning. So, for example, I've cut my finger. It's going to be painful for the finger. I'm going to heal it, but it's learned something. But my wider whole, which is a conscious entity, has learned as well, which it couldn't do in its current form. And perhaps that's part of its life cycle.
I knew this should have been a Thursday. We're never going to fit this in. So let's jump to this other question.
Yes, thanks for that, Martin. Yeah, Zeno, have you ever had patients who have told accounts of seeing other people around them whilst they were down who could see them only?
I've probably read that wrong. Have you ever had patients who have told you accounts of seeing other people around them whilst they were down?
Whether down, maybe down and
in mood and things.
Yeah, down in mood. Yeah,
yeah.
Well, see, this is a difficult question.
They only could see them. Yeah,
I've got to be careful as a doctor on
this.
Yeah,
well, perhaps not answer it.
Well, no, I mean, I can say that you must always judge patients objectively. And of course, you must always consider a psychological element to a phenomenon, whether that be hallucination, delusion, etc. But of course, if you have a understanding that there may be a wider phenomenon at work, for example, I might see a patient who says he's got past lives. I'm not going to, as a doctor, I should theoretically, and I will think of a psychological element to it, right? But I might also, with my second head, think, well, I also have a belief system, and doctors have belief systems, and they will work with their belief systems to try and understand whether or not something is real or not real. And obviously, you'll want to triangulate something. That's why this tool is created. It's a triangulation tool to try and make it prove more something that is not provable, more provable, like Truth tries to do. So yeah, that's a tricky question. I can't necessarily say too much more about that. But yeah, I mean, I think most doctors will always be open-minded. And if someone came across as saying that they'd seen something, but they were very lucid and very aware, you'd have to have an open mind about it. That's what I will say. Yeah.
Brilliant. Let's have another question then, Les.
Karen Beeman and Martin, has your consciousness grown throughout your learnings, and has it brought you to any previous lives and consciousnesses in this life?
So have I ever experienced any knowledge of past life? Look, I tried to get hold of the Akashic records. I failed miserably. I don't have the library card for that one, unfortunately. But look, I think it's a work in progress, as we all are. I think the only tangible thing that I could say that improved with my vibrational consciousness level would be my ability to remote view when doing it properly. So you have to meditate for a period of time and do it. When I used to fail, it used to be because I was just trying to have a go, not having any real sort of thought and focus on it. So I think there's an element about the person operating it and trying to do it. They have to be serious and genuine about it. And of course, if you've got kids flying around the house, it's hard for to come bouncing on the bed and trying to meditate. It's very difficult. Life gets in the way, but also life must also let it happen so that you can improve oneself. And maybe if there is this entity that we're part of a life cycle of that we are going to, that maybe that you will improve. You will improve to. I don't know. I mean, I'm just postulating. It probably sounds crazy to some people.
No. I think that's all we can all do. Martin.
David Backer, love the t-shirt, Paul. Is the guitar a Les Paul?
I'm not sure, Dave. But yeah, thank you. Daughter's buying me all these t-shirts, mate. And good to see you here, David. And let's have a chat in next week or so.
O'Connell, Martin, are you talking about like a CE5 report? I know that you've got that in one of the categories, haven't you?
Yeah. So in the UFO category, for example, we have the CE5 sort of breakdown of how you might be encountered. The C5 being the one where we try and go out to the entity, the phenomenon, as it were, to try and draw them in. I try to extrapolate that into cryptid, demonic, and angelic, as well as poltergeist and ghost. look, it's tricky. I don't. This is not. This is new science that you were trying to develop, and I couldn't see that there was anything like this. I think there are some bits where people have created forms which allow descriptions of the phenomenon and the event, but nothing, as far as I can see, that looks at our side of it. That two-way story that we spoke about. What is it about you as the contactee that maybe draws that in, or is there a connection? I don't think I've seen any data to support that or any research on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. And O'Connell got another question in. Paul, which psionics do you recommend or other cameras for capturing night sky phenomena?
Well, I think all the psionics are good, O'Connell, and I think it was Jeremy that said that they've just been developing even better ones. I use that Psionics Aurora Pro, and Ian's got one, Jeremy's got one, and they are good. They're good for what they are. I don't know what they cost, about £900, I think. But they can see in the dark a lot better than most cameras. People will say, well, resolution, it's only 720p. But if you've got a 4K camera, you're not going to see in dark. These things can see in dark, so that's what I use. But I think there are some lower priced cameras out there. Jack, and incidentally, Jack's not being well. He's just had quite a major operation. So Jack will come on. He's been on Truth Proof before. We're wishing you all the best, mate. But Jack bought something for £350. I think it brought him from China, but it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I can find out what it is, and if you want to contact me, I'll send you a link to it because it was really good. So there are other cameras out there, basically.
Yeah. Mark Anderson, Martin, how are you saving the data? Are you using a form of database? I'll just say at the outset, Mark, we have put the link to download the form in tonight's description of the show. And there's an email address in that description for you to send that form if you so wish to use it, and anybody else for that matter.
Yeah. So we'll be compiling a database. Well, I'll be compiling a database. I don't think Paul's going to compile the database. But certainly, if there's some interesting events or phenomenon that occur, if you want Paul to sort of follow up with you so that maybe he can do a discussion with you, an interview with you, that's possible. I think Paul has said that's something he'd like to try and do. But there will be a database. We'll try and extrapolate as much as we can out of the data, and then hopefully I'll come back one evening on a Sunday to try and talk it through, show if there's any connections there that we can,
and see whether there's any patterns being formed, which is what we're looking for, really, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, obviously it depends on how much data we get. I mean, the more people that do it, the more significant the outcome. That's it.
Rocky's just said,
Rocky Newson's, should we include a time of day? I feel that could be relevant. Is that on there?
No, but it's in the descriptors. You can write it in your description. So it was this date at this time. That would be helpful.
3 a.m. or whatever.
I could have put all of these things in as separate questions, but it then would have been so unwieldy that
as we were doing this, because I don't know how long we've been looking at it, about probably 8 weeks, probably more.
3 months,
and I kept adding bits.
Yeah, you did.
And I'm sure Martin kept thinking like, oh, that's why he's got no hair on the sides of his head. Well, you've had your haircut as well.
Shout out to Zach at Camden X Hair. Thank you very much for the haircut. It makes me look nice and sharp.
Wow.
Representing the Truth Proofers. I got to make sure.
I think we need to go down there, don't we, Paul, as well?
We've got 10 minutes left, Les. So are we having a few more questions? Because I just want to pick up on sound.
Ross Ghost Whisperer, he said, this looks like a well worked out program. Very excellent work. There you are.
Thanks, Andy. And I hope you're not working too hard on that combine, mate. I think you're nearly done now.
If you do, I got to capitalize. Some man in the States has studied a possible link between house mold and paranormal experiences. It can affect human mind and hallucinations. Any thoughts on that, Martin?
Yeah. I mean, I think the mind is susceptible to certain stimulants. So even antipsychotics or antidepressants could theoretically cause an issue. And that's psychological issues can occur because of disorders with certain hormones in the brain, serotonin, for example. With DMT, that's a serotonin, I think, dimethyl phenidate. And then psilocybin, which I think there was a question about that has a similar effect as well. Now, it's going to be difficult to tease out if this was a drug-induced effect, and that was then affecting the hormones in the mind in that way, or, as we mentioned at the beginning, with DMT, was that somehow expanding one's conscious mind?
Yeah.
You could then connect with, as the ayahuasca would do with the Hopi Indians, for example, to connect with that higher state and higher dimensional entities, if such things exist.
Yeah.
It is a great question. I don't know. It hard to tease it out. It would have to be some level of objective nature to it. If someone's been taking loads of drugs and they went off their rocker because that's what drugs might have done to them, you'd have to say, well, look, that's a variable we must include. But likewise, we can't just dismiss, because we say that, small microdosing of DMT, etc., is now, or is it psilocybin? I think it's being used in trials to treat depression. So the medical profession is looking at it seriously, but in a different way. But how is that affecting our consciousness? How is it affecting our mind? How is it affecting our mood in this state with microdosing? But on a wider perspective, is that allowing us to manifest an ability to connect to the conscious mind, that wider mind that I just wonder exists as part of this unusual life cycle? And it was Matthew Gillis. Nathaniel Gillis, who kind of made that trigger in me. He was telling us about that entity that kind of parasitizes into the consciousness. Well, why can't we, as a bigger being, an entity, be kind of like the funnel which is coming in? And Nathaniel's parasite is just a little well, just that, a parasite or a flea that's coming along with it, to try and entertain themselves in this 3D reality. And you look at the phenomenon that the physicists will say that we're actually a projection, a holographic projection. Couldn't that holographic projection be from the conscious mind? We know that the conscious mind affects 3D reality. We've seen that with the double slit experiment, as we said. So some people would say that we are essentially manifestations of a projection through a number of lenses from different dimensions, higher dimensions, into this from 4D to 3D world. It's unusual, it's weird, but it's scientific. It has a scientific basis. And it's when you look at these things that makes you wonder, actually, I think there is more to life and death than meets the eye. I don't think it is, as that question asked, just a part of trying to be complicated. I think there may be more to it than that. And there's, in my view, and I'm looking for it, evidence that might back that up, and that's the triangulation component. It's not just, well, one past life seems to have happened. Well, what about the other ones? And the other ones, there's not just two, there's loads. The near-death experiences, there's loads of similar outcomes, and they're people who haven't talked to each other about it.
We'll stop you there then, and we'll go to another question.
Sorry,
we needed 2 hours.
I've gone down the rabbit hole, Paul. I've gone down the rabbit hole, mate.
Zeno has got another question in, Dr. Martin, and without breaking any patient confidentiality here, have there been patients experiencing OBEs, NDEs that have reported shadow entities within the hospital whilst watching?
Well, to me, no. But I'll be honest, I haven't asked that question. When I was working in hospitals, so I'm a GP, so I don't do that. But when I was working in hospitals and on oncology wards, that wasn't something that you would ask. In my day, that wasn't something that was the first thing that would come up. Although there are some doctors, I think UK and American, who may have actually looked at this and tried to have an understanding about what goes through your mind as you die. Can you somehow come back and connect with us? Can you speak to a relative so that we know this happened? And I think there's some research that people are doing on that, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up.
If anybody wants to go onto our YouTube videos, you look at the military encounter and that soldier that was in the Princess Margaret Military Hospital, and he claims to have seen some kind of shadow entity, and he specifically gave us the story, and we kind of added images to it and everything for him, because he's hoping that some of the people, the nurses on the ward and the other guy in the bed opposite, he knows they saw it, he's hoping they'll come forward, so that there will be people out there that have seen and experienced these things. And I believe I spoke to the guy. It's not some email I've had, and I've just sort of just tagged a few pictures on with Les, and we've done it. I've spoke extensively to this man. I believe he's telling the truth. Go on then, Les.
No, I mean, I was just going to add to that. I mean, obviously, as we go towards the veil, the Barry Fitzgerald's veil, you know, death is an element of that, right? And you know, is that transition going to show these entities coming through? You don't need drugs to see them then, perhaps. And is your vibration changing at that state? I mean, I don't think anyone's done any research on that. We know that cells vibrate at, is it 62 to 70 hertz? And if it goes below 62, that theoretically implies that maybe there's an illness to those. I then thought to myself, well, look, how does vibration work with matter? How does that work? You know, is it in these contactee descriptors when people have been abducted by aliens and they've been healed by aliens? Have they in some way improved the vibration of those dangerous cells, those cancerous cells, perhaps, using vibration to improve them? You know, they say, they shone a light on me and I was healed. Well, was that
did it raise the vibration?
This is the question. And did it do it at an atomic level? We know about plasma that can almost, well, that can transmute. I mean, I was watching a program about how they've transmuted exhaust gases as part of a perpetual energy device, almost using water, where they use vortices. And this is open source data. This is open source information. I can tell you the guy's name. I even wrote it down so that I could tell you. It's the Thunderstorm Generator by Malcolm Randall. And if you want to look up a YouTube about it, Randall Carlson talks about it. And he talks about how plasma, what is plasma? Plasma is the fourth state of energy. If you rip off the electrons and neutrons become protons, you essentially break down all of the bonds in that atom. Okay, all of the bonds in that matter. You can theoretically then, it should, you know, if you cool it down, it should just come back to what it was. However, using certain vibrational frequencies, and there's some element of this in terms of geometry and numerology, sorry, from ancient texts. They use the numbers, apparently, according to Randall Carlson, to create the appropriate frequencies, which would then allow the exhaust gases, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, to transmute, to become plasma with the oxygen and the water, to become a plasma. They shot it with this frequency, whatever those frequencies were. They don't tell you, although it is in the open source information. It then transmuted into oxygen, and there was no sort of CO2 or carbon monoxide. I mean, if you believe what he shows you, and he shows you the data, and he shows you a video of the outcome of him recording the data from this engine.
Martin, we're going to have you back on here, because we've literally got...
What the hell is that? I mean, if you can try... I mean, this is the Philosopher's Stone, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah.
You know, lead to gold, you know, you'll make me rich. But, you know, it's, I mean, how does that vibration work? I mean, is that how the vibration worked at Skinwalker in what was it, Shack 2, where they created that wormhole or that portal? Was that vibrational thing somehow working on the bonds to open up a portal to another dimension or another point in space-time? Who knows?
Are you coming back on to expand on this? Because we're literally there. It's the hour's gone.
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll get this question in from Andy Decode.
One question.
Andy, kind of a fundamental question. If when we die and pass on to another realm, then what reason is there for us to be here in the first place if everything is hidden from us?
So for me, this is the point where you are a higher conscious entity. This avatar, which is why they talk about this holographic universe. For me, that's not you. You're actually a higher level being, which has actually had to condense itself to have some kind of learning or experience that it wanted to do. And that's why you can't connect to it, because it's not wanting you to connect to you.
Until you're ready, until you've achieved that
precisely
higher level.
Exactly. And maybe that's where all of this high level learning comes from when you talk about Buddhist techniques, ancient Chinese prophecy, learning, teachings, Egyptian mythology, all of these sorts of things come to play. And lots of civilizations have come up with a similar theme, okay, maybe it's to make everyone feel good, or maybe there's something more to it. I don't know. I'm trying to triangulate it. It's hard to do. Before we go, can I just say hello to my other half upstairs, Camille, Mobius, who's watching, and Tiamat as well. They will kill me if I don't say hello. And lots of love. And it's my first YouTube.
Yeah. So no, Martin, thank you. And I'm Moby, I Tia, and I Camille. That's great. And Les, thank you. Martin, thank you.
Yeah, and great supporter of the show, Lee Roscoe, along with lots and lots of good people out there. Brilliant show as always, and thanks Emily and Martin. Fantastic idea, truth proof. And we'll end on that one.
Thank you, and thank you, Alison, as well. And good night.
Good night.
We'll see you all next time. Good night.